folks, Mr. G here with another educational video. This video is going to go through a summary of everything we've done so far with sine law and cosine law and give you a step-by-step guide on how you can solve a triangle. The first step for solving any triangle is to count the number of sides and angles that you have access to in the question. Usually there'll be a total of 3, so 3 sides, 3 angles, or a mix of the two so that you have 3 pieces of information. The first case, and we haven't talked about this in too much detail, is if you have all angles here. So they give you 3 angles, and if this is the case, you can't actually solve it. It's not that there are no triangles. In fact, there's an infinite number of answers here. For example, if I told you that all of the angles in my triangle were 60 degrees, we could draw a sketch of this. As you can see, this forms an equilateral triangle, but we don't know how big this triangle is. These sides could have length 1, they could have length 10, they could have length 100, they could have length 100 million. We don't know. So there's actually an infinite number of answers. If this was on a quiz or a test, what I would suggest you do is just answer no answer, because there isn't a unique answer to this question. You can't solve it. If we're given 1 side and 2 angles, this is one of the cases where we would use sine law. Our first step would be to solve for the last angle. Since we know 2 of them, we know the sum is 180, we can subtract the 2 known angles from 180 and find our last angle. Our second step is just to use sine law. We'll have to use it twice because we have 2 missing sides, and we can get each missing side using sine law. If you have 1 side and 2 angles, you will always get 1 triangle. If we have 2 sides and 1 angle, this is the most difficult case. And depending on which sides and which angles you have, you're going to have to use different laws. In order to know which law you have to use, ask yourself, do we have a side angle pair? So for example, do you know both angle B and side B? That would be a side angle pair. If you have a side angle pair, we'll use sine law to find our missing angle that's across from the other side that we don't know here. But we have to be careful for the ambiguous case. We might have more than one answer here. We can solve for our last angle using the fact that all the angles sum up to 180 degrees. We know 2 of them, we can get the third. And then we can use sine law to get our last side. In this case, we can end up with 0, 1, or 2 triangles. Because when we do this first step here, we can end up with 2 different angles that work, only 1 angle that works, or sometimes no angles that will solve our problem. If we don't know a side angle pair in our 2 sides and 1 angle, so if there's no pairs here, then what we need to do is use cosine law. We'll use the cosine law to solve for the missing side that we don't have. Next, we'll use the sine law to find our smallest missing side. We want the smallest side here because it avoids the ambiguous case, because it has to be less than 90 degrees. Finally, we can use the fact that all the angles add up to 180 to solve for our last angle here. When we have 2 sides and 1 angle, and we use the cosine law, it will always get 1 triangle as an answer. Never 0, never 2. If you're given all 3 sides, our first step is to use the cosine law and to find the largest missing angle. So the largest angle will be across from our largest side. The reason why we do this is the other 2 angles, which we're going to solve using sine law, have to be less than 90. This avoids the ambiguous case. I'd also watch out for impossible triangles here. We saw an example of that in the last video. And if you do run into an impossible triangle and use cosine law, you'll end up with a value for the cosine of your angle that you can't find an angle for. Our next step is to use the sine law to find one of our missing angles. It doesn't matter which one you choose, but remember this must be less than 90. So don't worry about your ambiguous case. Finally, we'll use the fact that the angles sum to 180 degrees to find our last angle. If you're told 3 sides, you can either end up with no triangles that are possible or only 1 triangle that is possible. You can't end up with 2. That's the end of our video here. Hopefully you found this summary useful. Take a look at the homework that I've posted and try out the quiz if it's available to you right now. See you in the next video.